All right, welcome to take 2 of podcast number 4 of the Cinescoots.
In take 1, I opened up by singing the Batman theme, and now that just feels derivative and unnatural, so I will not be singing it at the moment, but I may sing it later.
You're going to surprise me with it?
Yeah, it was good. It was good, people at home. It was good.
It was good. If I can uncorrupt the file, I'll pop it in somewhere. Anyway, I am Javier. With me,
with him is Thano Prokos.
Thano Prokos. Oh, okay, all right. That's a little. It's definitely a lot tamer than it was the last time, huh?
yeah. It's the second time is just never as good as the first.
Yeah,
but we are the bum.
There it is.
Now, the last time I did dun 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 dun, and this time I did bum 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 bum.
Oh, so it's not as derivative.
Yeah, is it dun or bum? The world may never agree.
You know, if the Cine-Scoots podcast takes off, maybe we can ask Matt Reeves in like 20 years.
Yes, what he intended.
Anyway, speaking of that, we are talking about Matt Reeves' The Batman, a very, very, very good, but very, very long movie. We intended for tonight. We are not really going to spend too much time on any non-spoiler talk. We'll give some basic thoughts, not thoughts and prayers, just thoughts. About what we thought about the movie, because we are both pretty sure that by now anybody who wants to watch it already A, has, or B, nothing that we say is going to change their mind on this topic, I feel.
Exactly, and if you can't afford to watch it, then stop being poor.
Yeah?
As a Kardashian would probably say.
As a Kardashian said, you're not trying hard enough. Get off your ass and go watch The Batman, you poor person. We'll see if this makes the final cut.
Sponsored by Prager University.
Oh no. Anyway, so I guess just to give my initial quick little bit, I really enjoy the movie. I think it's probably my favorite, if not one of my favorite Batman movies. As someone who has seen, I think, all Batman movies. But I do have just a few small issues, and I think the movie could easily have about 20 to 30 minutes just trimmed off in strategic places.
So my take is, while it did feel a little long, it didn't feel like offensively long. Mm-hmm. Like I said in our first cut, to me it didn't have like that Django Unchained final act that was just totally unnecessary. But I will agree. 3 hours, it could have been done in less.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. It is, I don't know if I love it more than The Dark Knight, and I'm probably the 1 millionth person to say this on some sort of recording, but it's up there. It's definitely top 3 Batman movies ever. In my opinion, top 2 Batman movies ever.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest change, so going straight into spoilers, I would say, let's go ahead and talk about the man of the show, Mr. Robert Pattinson, Mr. Edward Cullen himself, the Batman, Bruce Wayne. What are your thoughts on him?
So, after the entire internet could not decide whether he would be a good Batman after nobody could picture him in anything besides his iconic role in the White House. I thought, I thought he was, appropriately brooding. I thought, I liked how jacked he was, in the sense that it wasn't obnoxious like Ben Affleck for me.
Okay.
And some of the fight scenes were, very, very like street level and brutal. I would say he looked derpy at some points, but I think that was just the hair. But I love me some R-Pats. I think he did a fine job.
I think when you said that, when you say he looked derpy in some scenes, there is one specific like frame that comes to mind for me. I can't quite remember what happens, but he like takes off his cowl and he's like staring off and he's got this weird like monkey face going. And that's the only thing I can think of. It's wild. But
yeah.
I think as far as the Batmen that have come before him, I can't really point to anyone that I would be like, they did everything better than him. I would argue that his Bruce is probably the most boring. But that is a product of the story, right? The story in this movie is definitely like just way more of a fucking bummer, which is kind of funny if you think about that. This movie feels like more of a bummer, but we don't have to go through the rehash of his parents dying, right? Like, I think even you made this joke while we were watching the movie. You're like, I wonder what happened to his parents. Why is he so sad?
Yeah.
And you know, props to them for skipping like the old song and dance about this. Is it necessary to skip it? No. Is it necessary to show it? No. Does it affect the movie? I guess if this is your very first Batman like thing ever, it could. You could be like, I wonder what happened. But I think there's enough context to kind of understand.
Yeah. There's definitely enough context to understand. Like, if you walked into this movie not understanding what was going on, then you are the third dumbest person on Earth. The second dumbest person on Earth is the people who doubted whether Robert Pattinson could play Batman because he was in Twilight. And then, of course, the first dumbest person on Earth is Trump supporters. So that's fair. Just objective. That's the objective hierarchy right
hierarchy there. Here. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? Ain't nobody going into this movie with this being their introduction to Batman, right? Except for maybe the fucking baby that was at the screening on day one when we went to see it. That baby was probably crying because he was confused as to why Batman was so sad.
Was this the same baby that was in the bar where we do karaoke that was present while I was singing Because I Got High? After 10 p.m. And then the manager got mad at me for singing a karaoke song in a bar where people are notorious for doing cocaine in the bathroom. Not me, everybody. Not me. People do cocaine in the bathroom at the bar. Not me.
People do cocaine.
Correct. Anyway, back to the task at hand. So I think the genesis of this conversation was like, where he fits for us in the echelons of Batman.
Sure.
And I think, Batman, like any sort of pop culture, like, you're always going to be nostalgic for the one that you came of age with, unless that one is just notoriously bad.
Sure.
I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Christian Bale. I will say, if I try to think about things objectively, I do think Robert Pattinson is the better Batman. I think Christian Bale is a fine Batman and the better Bruce Wayne so far, but Bruce Wayne didn't exactly get a lot of time to shine in this movie. So I fully believe that Robert Pattinson could be a fantastic Bruce Wayne if that character is expanded upon in sequels. What I really liked about this movie being a downer is that usually, especially for pop culture, once again, you kind of save the downer for the second one in the trilogy, right? Empire Strikes Back, Dark Knight. You can probably think of another less basic example that I just gave. But I like that we kind of started off with, the disaster, right?
Yes.
Because to me, that makes me intrigued as to what can happen, in any other of these movies that come out.
Yeah, and I guess I have heard a few people give the argument that this movie feels almost like the first and second installment of a trilogy almost put together. In the sense that Bruce kind of goes through that whole, like, he's doing his thing, and then his world kind of crumbles, and now he is kind of, like, being a little bit more hopeful. Like, the end of the movie, I feel like, ends weirdly hopeful, despite all the awful shit that happens.
Absolutely. And I think part of the we didn't I don't think we gave our official spoilers warning, but you know, if you were honestly waiting for it, of our million fans, if you were waiting for a spoilers warning, and you're mad you didn't get one, then you can jump off a cliff. Anyway, so you know, I actually really like what they did with a lot of the hopefulness. Not just like the torchbearer thing that a lot of people talk about, right? But also the fact that he was able to come up with a realistic image of who his parents were. That wasn't the myth of the perfect Thomas and Martha Wayne that, you know, we've kind of grown up with as watchers of Batman over the years. But also wasn't the, like, oh, these people were just like total scoundrels and fuck them, right? Like he finds out that the truth is somewhere in between, and it's something that's, I don't know if satisfying is the right word, but it paints them as people who were as genuine as they could be,
and definitely flawed, right?
Exactly.
And so one of my small complaints, I would say, is that they didn't let that sit, right? So in the scene where he finds out that his dad inadvertently essentially called a hit on a reporter, like, you learned that, and I was like, oh, damn, there, I guess, you know, that's kind of gangster, I suppose. And then literally, like, the next scene, that shit's completely undone. It's essentially like, oh yeah, but it was an accident. Your dad was gonna go to the cops and turn himself in. I kind of wish they would have gone a little bit more in the, like, oh yeah, he did a bad thing, and you know, it was eating him on the inside, and he was struggling with what to do, and then he died. But I feel like it just was resolved a little too quickly.
I would have to go and revisit the pacing of that resolution on another watch through. For context, for our millions of fans, I've seen this once. Have you seen it 3 times? 4 times?
I've seen it twice.
Twice. Oh, really? Okay.
Only twice. I haven't been able to go see it more than that.
So, yeah. So I will say the thing, though, that at least made me possibly overlook that was I liked that they also revealed that the reporter himself was shady too.
Yes.
Right. And it shows that Batman is really working within a context of not just the shady rich parents, not just the shady cops, but like everyone's fucking shady.
Yeah, and even Batman, like, we like to think of Batman as this guy who is trying to do good, but in this movie, I think it really does paint him as, like, he's a fucking weirdo who just goes out and just beats the absolute shit out of poor people, and he's like, I'm doing my best here, guys. I don't know if things are working, but I gotta keep trying. I think that is literally in, like, the first opening monologue where he goes, I don't know if what I'm doing is working, but here we go.
Yeah, and I think to the film's credit, it tackles that, like, right away, right? That's kind of, even before this movie, that's kind of become like a meme about Batman and like a criticism that a lot of people had in this current political climate. Which I get, but then a big part of me, which was also partially biased because, like, you know, this is something I love from my childhood, so obviously I'm going to be like maybe more overprotective of it than I should be. You know, I always thought that criticism was like a wee bit silly, because I think while comics can't not address serious issues, right? Like, it's it's still a fucking comic, right? Like,
Yeah.
yes, he's beating up poor people, but that's just the premise. Roll with it. And granted, that's seriously a problematic statement, right? So I will be the first to acknowledge it. But I like that they addressed it right away, and I like that they got him to a point where he's come face to face with the difficulty of that reality. And while he hasn't fixed the essential process of who he is, he's trying to navigate a way to sort of like still be Batman and also not be such a fucking psycho the whole time.
Yeah.
Right?
So
to me, I find that inner conflict interesting.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I found really interesting was literally the opening scene of the movie, where so you start right away with like the big title screen, right? The Batman shows up, and then you see someone looking into like a rich people house, and I don't know why it just, to me, I was like, oh, Batman is like staking out a house. He is either like looking into something shady, or he is keeping an eye on this guy because he's worried that he might be getting attacked or he got some intel. And it took me a second. It took me a while to realize this is not Batman. This is the fucking Riddler, like staking out his next prey. And I was like, that's a really good like way of showing that Batman really is like the Joker famously says in his really honestly not very good book, The Killing Joke. Like, you are one bad day away from just like losing your shit. And I mean, he is essentially, he's got like all the makings of a serial stalker.
Yeah. And you kind of see that with the way he treats Catwoman in this movie, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, he watches her strip.
Yeah.
He, and he's very nonchalant about it too.
Nonchalant, controlling.
The way he's forcing her to like wear the contacts in the scene, so he has her wear these like weird contacts, which I think are kind of a nice nod to like the Arkham games, where you have like the detective vision, where you're basically able to like see who everyone is. You have like X-ray vision, and you can see like where traps are in the games. So I think that was a nice little nod to that. But he essentially like forces her to like go back into the club and get intel on like the Penguin's people.
Yeah. And in many ways, it kind of starts out with, he kind of starts at that deconstructed version of the character that pretty much everybody who saw Batman vs Superman did not like, right? There was a big criticism that we jumped into the deconstruction of Batman with that movie, and we never had time to like construct Batman. I kind of like that it takes a Batman who's kind of like Ben Affleck's Batman as the start of this movie, but obviously does it more competently than Zack Snyder did.
Oh, for sure.
And then more organically, like, gets him to the point where we knew him before Batman v Superman and before this. Like, he by the end of this movie, he feels more like a Nolan or animated Batman than he does the Psycho Batman.
Yeah, I think by the end that's a good way to say it, right? By the end, we leave him as where I would picture like the animated series Batman to be. Yes, he's got like that gravitas. But eventually he kind of knows, I can't just be in Batman mode 24/7. Like, there are other things that I can do as Batman that I can't do as Bruce, but I think he also realizes there are things as Bruce that he can do that he cannot do as Batman.
Which to me is what intrigues me so much about any potential sequels, because I seriously wonder how comfortable he'll be. Like, can he be Playboy Bruce in the next movie? Like, is he not there yet? Has he fully stopped being Vengeance, and can now be something else? Or is this going to be like a gradual process? I love to me, I love the fact that, I don't necessarily know how far he'll progress between now and the next movie and however many of these they end up making.
Yeah.
So that's what I really like about where this movie ended up.
Yeah, and as far as that goes, I don't think I want him to go full Playboy Batman, right? I feel like, especially right now with the political climate and the social climate, like it just doesn't feel like it's necessary anymore. I think he could be more like an activist type of role in his public persona, where people go, oh yeah, he's already doing good. There's no reason why he would then go at night and beat up a bunch of poors. Yeah. And you kind of bring things into the current times.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think to me, so while you were talking, I just had the thought of well, what if they do Playboy? But then what if the argument is that that's too much in the other extreme, right? And then his character arc is that he has to find something new. I think the challenge with or maybe just a third option that's not necessarily in between, but is something else entirely.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the challenges with Batman, and then I am only moderately into comic book stuff, right? So there may be some more hardcore fans who totally disagree with what I'm about to say. But I think in terms of pop media, it's hard to find something fresh to do with that character that isn't just totally out of left field.
Yes,
right.
I completely agree.
We've seen a lot of different brands of Batman, and to be honest, as much praise as the DC animated universe gets, he's kind of the same character.
Yeah,
in a lot of those movies. There's already a handful of movies where it's Superman bad, Batman dark but good, right? I'm a little tired of that.
Mm-hmm.
I never want to see fucking Injustice played out in any sort of live action form, because I honestly think that's been done to death.
Oh, for sure.
To be honest with you. So to me, props to this movie for at least feeling more fresh than I thought the character could be.
Yeah. So I think that was a pretty good amount on Batman and some of the parts about Batman himself in the movie. So I do kind of want to touch on some of the other big players, right? So I think probably the obvious second player here is I would say Catwoman and the Riddler, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's actually put Catwoman a little bit in the back burner because Paul Dano, he plays the Riddler. What did you think about the Riddler in this movie?
So it was interesting. There's I haven't really played the Arkham games enough, but I remember the disembodied voice kind of in the background. On Facebook, before The Dark Knight Rises came out, there were photoshopped images of Johnny Depp as a potential Riddler.
Really?
And,
Johnny Depp?
Then I was yeah, Johnny Depp. And back then I was oh, this is dope. He's this suave, gangsterish character, right? That obviously didn't happen. I forget when in the world I first thought this. Maybe it was after I really saw Seven for the first time. But I saw Seven and I was oh, if they made a Riddler movie with the Batman and it was, grounded and real like these Nolan films are, they should do Seven, but with the Riddler. Mm-hmm. So in many ways, this is kind of what I always wanted for this version of the character.
Uh-huh.
I don't love his costume, but whatever. But yeah, I the angle to me made very logical sense, and I liked the execution a lot.
Yes, so I am 100% with you that I really think his costume is stupid. And I will say this: there is one instance in which I was kind of okay with it for like 5 minutes during the movie, and that is where I had like a split second where I was like, "Oh my god, are they gonna do Hush?" And they are having us think that he's the Riddler, but he is in fact Tommy Elliott, right?
Right.
There is a big hint. They talk about the reporter. I forgot his name, but his last name is Elliott. That's the dad. And then they have this big screen thing. It just says Hush on like the video projector, right? And I was like, that would make sense because in the comics and in the games and in the shows, when they have Tommy Elliott show up, like he's got his face all bandaged up, so his face is just like a blank slate, which then would kind of mirror what he's got on, right? He's got this really ugly fucking mask, and he's like kind of taped up, like with saran wrap. So I was like, okay, if they decide to go this way, where it's kind of like a mishmash of both Riddler and Tommy Elliott, like that would be kind of dope. But they didn't. So then that immediately took down my little 5-minute liking of that costume design, right? And I like how they did it with him, where they made him basically like a crazy fanboy, similar to like the Scream movies, like they just came out, where like he the whole time, I guess it's a kind of like a big plot twist where he believes he is working with Batman, and he believes that they are both working together to like rid the corruption from Gotham, right?
Yeah.
And that is a nice little fake out, right? Because they do have you thinking for a few minutes. And I guess this is my fault for watching a lot of movies in the theater where I watched a lot of trailers. Because of that, not ones that I really think he knows Batman is Bruce Wayne. Because in the trailer, they make it very obvious that they want you to think that he knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne. And I feel like that's not something that you would throw in your trailer if it was going to be a big consequential thing. Which is why... Oh, go on.
And I was going to say, especially if you're throwing Joker into the mix, right? I believe Joker pretty much in most of the canon never knows Batman's secret identity, correct?
No, he chooses not. He makes a point to not.
And I think if you can never let Joker know his secret identity, then you definitely can't let Riddler know his secret identity.
But I mean, he does do that in this movie, which I thought was nice. It was a nice touch to his character. He does have the line. I wonder. I don't know if you caught it. He does, have that fake out where he's saying Bruce Wayne, Bruce Wayne. He's like, oh, we didn't get him. And then he's like, oh, we're trying to unmask. And he's like, unmask who? Me? And the Riddler goes, no, I don't fucking care. Like, you are you already. Like, I don't need to know who you are under the mask to know that you are Batman. Like, that's just who you are through and through. So that was like a nice, I guess, payoff to that fake out.
Yes. And coupled with, when he yells no right there after his disappointment. Wonderfully executed by Paul Dano. And I think the payoff and that acting just complement each other so well.
I didn't like that.
No.
Yeah, no. It did not work. I feel like that was a little too much. I could see where they're going, but that just kind of came off like, I don't know, just, I don't want to say childish, because I guess, it is a childish idea. And he is mentally stunted, right? Like, if you believe that...
He's a little bit.
Yeah, he's essentially a kid. But I don't know, I didn't like the idea of this guy who is going through all of this, doing all this shit, now he's throwing a tantrum because he believes Batman is not his friend anymore.
I think the reason why I liked it is because... So it is Batman's own... his detective work came up short in being able to, in being able to thwart Riddler's plan, right?
Yes.
To me, it stings even harsher once you realize that, like, oh, Riddler's not even cool, calm, and collected. He's, he's a little bitch. Like,
yeah.
That scene kind of shows. So that made the failure of Batman all the more tragic for me. Which is why I liked that directorial choice.
I like I said, it's not that I didn't like that idea. I do like that idea quite a bit. I just didn't like how he played that specific part. I just felt like it was just a little too much. Maybe instead of being at like an 11, just take it down to like a 9. Just show that you're disappointed, show that you're angry, but like it's just, I don't know. It played too much like something that I would hear in my 3rd grade classroom when one of my kids doesn't want to share the ball with another kid.
You heard it here, folks. 11, 9, 9, 11.
Oh.
Javier Silva did 9/11.
I believe that jet fuel can melt steel beams.
Yeah.
Oh,
si se puede.
Goddamn, si se puede.
Si se puede.
So, but I was expecting it to happen, but it was nice to see that Batman did not win.
Yes.
Like, yes, we have seen him essentially lose. He technically loses at the end of The Dark Knight. It's less a legitimate loss. It's more of a like self-imposed loss in The Dark Knight, where he takes the fall. He says, "I'm the one who killed Harvey Dent. I'm the one who killed all these other people. Harvey Dent died an innocent man," right? Mm-hmm. So that is different. That's a sacrifice as opposed to like a legitimate loss, which we don't really see happen in a lot of superhero movies. Like, yes, there are definitely some movies where you're like, fuck, he lost. The biggest example with Infinity War. Like, they flat out lose. And it is weirdly satisfying to see these people who are usually seen as, they are essentially gods almost. They are, bigger than men, and they are just humbled like a motherfucker when they just lose, right? I really like that choice. That choice was cool. I really liked it. Although, I will say, not once did I buy the fact that Gotham would be flooded. Nowhere in the movie did they bring that up.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that. So maybe I missed something, but I felt like there was zero foreshadowing that was
none whatsoever. And I think that, like I said, it's a fantastic movie. And when you see little things that just don't, like inconsistencies, things that don't make sense, things that are just not quite right, they stand up a lot. And that's one of those. Like, they could have easily, during the debate scene at the very beginning of the movie, they could have had the mayor candidate be like, "Oh, because of you, the levees are like in poor condition," and you're like, "Oh fuck, there's levees." Nowhere in the whole runtime did they even suggest that there were seawalls that could potentially be blown up.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's where it could have definitely used some foreshadowing.
Yeah, I felt like that was a weird choice. It really does feel like it came out of nowhere.
And yet, maybe this is another point where we disagree, but I don't think, for me, it never came to the point where it like broke anything. Because I enjoyed very much seeing the consequences of the levees getting blown up, right?
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm.
So, yes, distracting. Yes, weird. Yes, it could have been an easy fix. But I think the overall competence of this movie is such a bulwark and so strong enough that type of error in a poor guy, but in a Zack Snyder attempt at this would have just stung so much more.
Yeah.
Right? And it goes to show that, while plot holes and inconsistencies can be problems, if the bulk of your movie is solid, then they can very much be overcome. If the bulk of your movie is not solid, then they stand out all the worse. And nothing that I'm saying right now is ultimately that profound. But I think this is just, more evidence that, this Batman is in the higher-ish echelon of Batman movies.
Yeah, and like I said, like it didn't ruin the movie for me at all. It really stands out to me when you're just like, oh, you were so close. You were so close to having such a top-notch, perfect movie. And you just didn't put attention on this, right? Like when you write a really good essay and you forget a period somewhere. Yeah. And then you have like two run-on sentences, and you're like, "Ooh, okay, that stands out, right?" That's more or less what I mean. So good on Paul Dano. Good for him in the sense that like he got to write his own comic book prequel on the character. I heard about it. I was like, oh, I might actually have to check it out. I don't know anything that he is in. I know he's in like the movie Prisoners. He's in some TV shows. I'm not gonna go out and look him up on anything else, really. But good job on this movie, I think.
I agree.
So I do have a couple of issues with Catwoman. In the sense that I talked to a coworker about this the other day. As much as I hate to say it, you can write her out of the movie, tweak a few things, and the movie is like you would be none the wiser. Which I feel like kind of then shows that a character is non-essential.
Yeah, I think my version of that comment is something I mentioned to you in the theater. I don't think she and Batman have a lot of romantic chemistry.
Yeah, it just kind of comes out of nowhere.
We know someone who disagrees with us.
Oh, for sure.
And if she's listening, thank you for listening to our work. But I think they have sexual chemistry, right? Like I totally see, bodies vibing on bodies, right? But I didn't get a lot of legitimate romantic chemistry.
But even I don't know, even then, like the sexual tension to me just didn't feel right. It to me, it just felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. Because at the very beginning, I don't know if it was just like me, but at first when she's talking, so she gets a phone call from a friend who is like dating. She's having an affair with the mayor. And she eventually goes missing, right? She gets a phone call from her, and she's like, oh, baby, like, I'll be home soon, like, we're gonna go away together, and I'm like, oh? Is this, like, a pairing? And then... But then I was like, that's weird, because, like, a lot of the marketing was pushing really hard on the Batman and Catwoman, like, getting together and some weird sexual tension. And, here's the thing. Batman and Catwoman have always had, like, playful flirtation, right? But I feel like this movie completely skips that, like, flirtiness and goes straight into, like, I'm gonna munch on your face. Wow. Which I don't know that I would believe this Bruce would kind of jive with.
I think that's a fair critique. Maybe for me, where I will take her being in the movie, because I do think she's an enjoyable character.
Yeah.
But I would love to see, a series of Batman movies where Selina Kyle really is a mainstay. Mm-hmm. And so far we've just really, in the live actions anyway, so far I've just gotten her in a couple one-offs. I would love for her to be like a legitimate main character. So for anything else, if that's going to be the case, then I'm glad she's in here from movie number 1. So her character can just get built in subsequent films. But I do agree that there's more could be done with her character to give her more to do, or to make her really more essential to the plot.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I've been very vocal about my like what's the word I'm looking for here? not disapproval, because honestly, like, who the fuck am I? But like my like indifference, I guess, towards Zoe Kravitz, right? And I ended up really liking her portrayal of the character. My only issue was I wish she was more essential. I wish that her scenes like did more than just to like progress the plot, because that's really what it felt like to me. She would be there and then she would be gone for like 20 minutes, and then she would come back for about 5 minutes, and then she was gone for 15 minutes. She would come back for 2 minutes, beat up a guy, and then she would be gone for another 30 minutes. And that to me just kind of feels like, well, all of this is shit that Batman could have done on his own. Like, you could have written that and cut out the middle woman and just had a standalone Batman thing. I'm glad that they try to give him someone to kind of give him a little bit more like connection. But they could have done that. They kind of did that with Alfred. When Alfred gets the bomb and he gets blown up, like, you do get that connection that even Bruce himself is like, I thought I could just block myself off from everyone and be fine with dying as long as I'm doing what I want. But like, that was like the first time that he was really kind of shooken up, right? Taken up.
Yes. And wait, that was one of the derpy moments when Alfred wakes up from his and Bruce, are you liking me?
Oh, so for context, in case anybody's listening without having seen the movie, so this is right after Batman or Bruce finds out that his dad inadvertently had a man killed, and this is the first time that he is talking to Alfred after Alfred exploded, and he just wakes up. Bruce turns to him and goes, "Alfred, you lied to me." And like, whoa, buddy, read the room. At least give him a second to be like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah,
that was one of those scenes for sure.
I think if they can expand on the Catwoman character in subsequent films, I think this can do wonders for the quality of this.
Yes,
of this franchise
for sure.
Because we haven't we really haven't seen the sidekick getting played out much in the Batman films, right?
No.
I mean, right? I mean, there's Batman and Robin, but that movie's a commercial. Nor have we really seen a woman really get interesting characterization in Batman films either. Since probably Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman.
Yeah, and even then, I honestly, I would have to go back and rewatch that. I haven't seen it in years, so I don't know really to what degree her character is developed.
It was the Reagan years, so characterization of a woman is obviously going to be, or maybe it was the Bush years, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I don't know. That one's definitely tricky. I would argue that, considering the leaps and bounds that they've made, especially with women in a lot of movies, especially in superhero movies, we had a decent Black Widow movie. We had a really good Wonder Woman movie, and we had a really mediocre Wonder Woman movie, right? I could definitely see someone like Matt Reeves with a good co-writer. He would definitely need a female co-writer, I feel. They could definitely make a really good Catwoman movie with Zoe Kravitz. She has that aura, I would say, of her, where you kind of do just want to watch her do her thing. She is weirdly captivating in a weird way. She does have the weird cat-like movements that you expect from a Catwoman without being like a caricature, right?
Yeah, there's going to be no basketball scenes in this movie.
Oh man, that movie's great.
Yeah, we should do that movie.
Oh man, that movie's painful, man. I tried rewatching it. I want to say over the pandemic. I think it was on a TV channel, and I could not get through it.
They put that on TV?
It was on.
My word.
I was watching it was on Pluto TV as one of those free streaming TV apps, and they just had movies playing, and that was one of them. And man, I could not. I had to change the channel. It was painful. But I do like her a lot. I just wish she had something more of substance to do. Which I don't know. I do like, so kind of to pivot and still kind of keep with her a little bit. So the two confirmed spin-offs that we have from this is we have a Penguin show coming out into HBO Max, and we have an Arkham series coming out. Which I will say, I think as far as the side characters go, despite how inconsequential he may seem sometimes, I really do like Colin Farrell's Penguin. He has probably the funniest line in the movie, where he's shitting on Batman for having shitty Spanish. He's like, "Am I the only one who knows the difference between L and La?" I really liked him. I really thought he was good. I know a lot of people say that they can't believe it's Colin Farrell under that makeup. I'm like, well, have you not seen literally any other movies with special effects and makeup props? You can definitely make someone look like anything.
Right. But he is great.
He is fantastic. I really am looking forward to watching a show with him. But I would say this is where I wanted to I wanted to pivot to him, but then still kind of go back to Zoe Kravitz. I would much rather have a Catwoman show.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I have yet to watch Peacemaker. That just might have to be a summer break thing.
Oh, it's fantastic. We should do an episode on that.
I think if I just sat down and watched that show and sat down and watched these spin-offs, I would enjoy them. For whatever reason, I'm just not I heard the news about the spin-offs and I was like, oh, whatever. And that's nothing against the spin-offs, nothing against the movie.
Yep.
None of them personally are intriguing me now. But I'm sure they can be great.
I am on the exact same boat as you on that. I'm gonna watch them, but I might wait until they are all done, and then I'll just binge it on a weekend, or if I have a vacation or whatever. I don't see the necessity in expanding on the Penguin in this world. Do I like him? Of course. He's pretty good. He's great. I don't think he needs his own show. I can very, very easily see how he can go from being the second fiddle to Falcone to then, ceasing that power vacuum and then becoming essentially the local crime lord, right? I can see that. I don't think I need a TV show to walk me through that.
And here is where I get to what is, to me, most fundamentally interesting about my experience with this movie. Despite all the positive things I've said about this movie so far, I will say that it has not captivated and dazzled me like other superhero movies have, in the sense that I've seen this movie, I really, really liked it. I'm excited to watch it again when it comes out on HBO Max. But I have not been, even though I said it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next one, I haven't been on pins and needles on myself being ooh, what's going to happen next? And nor am I, like I said, super excited about these spin-offs. Which to me, is interesting because I have zero bad taste for this movie in my mouth. But I will say I personally am not as invested in this as in finding out whatever fucking happens in Doctor Strange, for instance, or in the Dark Knight trilogy when I was in high school, and I was waiting for the third one to come out after seeing the second one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, although I guess it kind of boils down to like with this one, we really were not aware as to like what was going to happen with this. We kind of were under the impression that it was going to be like a straight up standalone. And as the movie progressed, like we kind of saw the makings of a franchise. Whereas with the Nolan movies, I feel like when you really started getting into it was, I'm assuming, The Dark Knight, right? Like you probably watched Batman Begins.
Batman Begins.
Like, yeah, you probably saw it, but you probably were not like, oh fuck yeah, the next one, right? Like it was when you hit that Batman, The Dark Knight, that you were like, oh shit, the next one, right?
Seeing the Joker card in theater for Batman Begins,
okay,
made me be like, oh shit, I can't wait for this next one.
Oh, okay. But I guess it's that, right? Like you kind of get that from the very beginning of that movie. You kind of knew that he was making a trilogy. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was a pretty clear thing. I know I definitely was not like in the loop back then as much as I am now with movies, like where I like look up news and all that shit. But I remember reading somewhere that like that was an intended thing. Like they wanted Nolan to make a Batman trilogy.
Yeah, I don't remember if that was facts or not.
Yeah,
it's definitely apparent by the second one, right?
Oh, for sure.
But yes, so yeah, I do contend that part of it might be because we didn't really necessarily have franchise expectations for this one.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest, like I didn't buy that this was going to be a standalone, like before I saw this.
That's fair.
I was like,
that is very.
There's no way they get this high profile of an actor. And like after the poor reception to Batfleck, there's no way it's just this one movie. I was gonna say, which part of me, even though I know would be stupid because they're just such different universes, part of me is kind of sad that it's gonna be a different Batman in the DCEU. But whatever. I think this franchise works best in its own environment, and not within a larger cinematic universe. Even though it's already creating one.
Yeah, I do have as bad as Justice League was, and as middle of the road as Batman v Superman was. I was genuinely curious as to what Ben Affleck would do with his own Batman. I really enjoyed.
He wasn't bad. I want to emphasize.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I just want to emphasize that I don't think Ben Affleck was bad as Batman. It's just those movies that suck. I think he's wonderful as Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Exactly, and that always does become. It always does become that problem, right? Like you have a really great cast. Like Gal Gadot can sometimes not act her way out of a paper bag, but she has gotten a lot better, and she is a really good Wonder Woman. Ben Affleck, he was a really good Batman. He's still hands down to today. He has my favorite Batman like action sequence in any movie, and it is in Batman v Superman. I genuinely love Henry Cavill as Superman. And so it is a little disheartening when you have these great characters and then the movie is just the thing that's like weighing them down. So I was really curious to see what he could do with his own take, with his own character. So it was a little sad to see the movie go this way, even though, again, like you said, I really don't have anything but high praises for this movie. But if they announce that Ben Affleck does decide to come back and be Batman on his own, you can bet your ass I'm fucking down to see that too.
Yeah. And maybe these DC movies really just need to... Maybe what they need is to have a billion projects going on at the same time.
I mean, that is really what they're doing.
Yeah. Which is kind of like how the animated universe works. right? Like you watch an animated film and you're like, oh, is there continuity? Maybe. Who cares, right?
Yeah, I think
So
with
yeah,
the animated, it's a little easier. It's a little easier to kind of play with that because all you really need is a voice actor, right? You can cast Kevin Conroy,
right.
and he will mumble his voice lines, and he will do his Batman, and you'll call it a day, right? Where with these movies, like you have to get these actors to go and like they do months and months of work, right? So it's
Yeah,
harder to kind of play with that line and just have that like is this canon? Maybe, I don't know. Because very clearly, no, this is definitely not the same Thomas Wayne that gets killed in Joker. No, that is definitely not the same Joker that we see at the end of this movie and the one that we see
yeah,
in the Joker movie. It is definitely not the same one that you see in the Ben Affleck movie. So it's definitely a choice to go this broad. I think that they failed their way through trying to make an MCU of their own. That their only option was to just like experiment.
right,
And good for
right.
them. Good for them for acknowledging that what they were doing was an inferior MCU, and then they were able to kind of branch out into finding their own groove.
And so far, it's kind of paying off. I mean, the most recent ones are, the most recent films and shows are hits.
Yeah,
Um,
as much as I dislike Joker, as much as I laugh at that movie and think that it makes some choices that for me do not work whatsoever, people loved it. Is it still the highest earning R-rated movie of all time?
I have no clue, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I think it's
Like,
definitely
what else?
up
What
there.
else would? Yeah, what else would eclipse it?
Deadpool was up there for a long time.
But Joker's after Deadpool and Deadpool 2. Like it comes out after, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Joker was
definitely.
2019, and the what's it called? Um, Deadpool was 2017.
Yeah,
I want to say.
yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
up
I
there.
mean, it's like I said, it might not be my favorite movie, but it made a lot of money. People really like it. So who am I to be like, stop making these movies because clearly it's making them a lot of money.
Exactly. And isn't that what this is all about?
That is, yeah, for sure. It so how are there any other characters that to you stand out in this movie before we kind of start wrapping up here?
Uh, I mean, I always love some Felix Wright. Not Felix Wright.
Jeffrey Wright.
You know who I'm talking about. Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah.
Um, he's fine, and I mean that is more than just. I mean that is more than just a mediocre fine. Like he does a fine job.
I really
And
liked him as Gordon a lot in this movie.
yeah, I like Andy Serkis's. I like his Alfred, even though we don't get a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel the need to talk about the Joker right now, unless you feel that we have to.
Oh
Um,
no,
that's
no.
there.
He he shows
Yeah,
up. He has a scene. They're being a little cagey on whether or not it is actually Joker or not, which to me tells me um, they're not really sure what they want to do right now, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to have everything 100% hashed out in
yeah.
these types of
But he
things.
said it. I think he said it in an IGN video that it is Joker.
He
Now,
kind of
like whether or not he comes out in the second movie, I think is still up to debate. But I thought it was confirmed that that is indeed Joker.
so that's yeah. So that's where I'm kind of like maybe he is Joker, maybe he is not, because I find it weird that this was a rumor that leaked a long, long time ago. And
Mhm.
like basically day one when the movie came out, he was like, "Oh yeah, sure, he's Joker, sure." And I wonder if maybe they could use that as like maybe trying to like kind of get ahead of it, or to maybe divert it and to like maybe misdirect people, which could happen. I don't know. It could not. Whatever they decide to do, I guess we will see. I do have a lot of faith in Matt Reeves. He has made a lot of my favorite movies.
Yeah. He does fine work.
He does very fine work.
I need to rewatch Planet of the Apes 2, Electric Boogaloo.
You say you never watched the last one.
I didn't, and I love the second one.
Oh, dude, man. So
I love the second one.
Yeah, so Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is fantastic, but I think War for the Planet of the Apes, I think for me, eclipses that a little bit.
Well, sign this bitch up.
You should watch it, and we should do an episode on it. I was very happy by it. I loved it. I love the fact that he came in on the sequel and essentially is the one known for those movies, even though they're not his movies.
Yeah, good for him.
Good for him. He came in, he took over. So we did mention Jeffrey Wright. One of the things that I will say, I loved his interactions with Batman, where they're more like coworkers that like don't really hang out outside of work, but when they are at work together, like they feel like they're almost like having a bit of a blast.
Yeah.
I thought the interaction where so the scene where Batman gets blown up, and he wakes up in like the lockup, and all the cops are like trying to take off the cowl. He's like trying to beat them up. And they have that scene where he's like, all right, I'm gonna give him a talking to. Don't worry, Chief, I got this. And he's like, we gotta get you the fuck out of here. And he's like, how? He's like, go punch me in the face. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
the Batman and Gordon being buds dynamic is one of the best parts about Batman movies.
I love how he calls him man. He's like, hey man, you gotta get out of here, man. Oh man, you can you believe this shit, man? It's very chummy, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's a good I keep on wanting to say backwash, but that's not the word.
Backwash? What
it's a good carryover from Bond. Right? He doesn't exactly play him with the same mannerisms, but it's that nice collegiality.
I could kind of tell that you had Bond in mind when you called him Felix.
Yes, of course.
But
that's where I first saw him.
Yeah, that was his most recent movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that's the first time I ever saw him in any film. Casino Royale. Yeah.
I didn't watch Casino Royale until a couple years after it came out, so I had seen him in a couple other things before. But, I think he did a good job. I am excited to see him fall into the role of commissioner.
Yes.
So let's play a little game, Thano. If you get to cast Barbara Gordon,
ooh,
what fine honey would you pick to play?
Dude, I don't fucking know enough actresses. I don't fucking know enough actresses.
I would want Tessa Thompson.
So okay, that to me was the low hanging fruit. Obviously.
Oh, but Thano, she's so good.
Okay, she is excellent, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'm gonna say hopefully someone. I would say hopefully someone new and unsung, but if it's someone who exists, I would need to hear her American accent first. But then Natalie Emmanuel, I would love to see her try.
So I do like that idea. She would be great. If they want to go a little younger, at least younger looking, does the name Laura Harrier ring a bell to you?
Nope. Who'd that be?
So I don't want to say relatively unknown because she was in a fucking gigantic movie. She plays Liz in Spider-Man: Homecoming. She is like the girl that Peter wants to bone in the movie.
I just Google imaged her. Yes. Yeah,
I think
I'd be down for that.
I think she would be great. She could have, fun. She could be a little bit similar in the vein of Zoe Kravitz and Catwoman, but a little bit less in like the weird sexual tension. She feels like she could be, a little bit more hopeful and still have fun and bring something a little different to the movie.
Yeah, because Barbara Gordon needs some sunshine in her.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Jesus Christ, she gets her back blown out and she's still relatively chipper.
Yeah.
So I really would like that idea. I really would like her in it. But man, this movie's doing great, doing gangbusters. It's making tons of money.
Gangbusters. Sound like hotcakes.
It is like hotcakes. It has made $603 million so far. As of 322, which is today. I was surprised that the cinema score was as low as it was. It's only an A-, which it's still great, don't get me wrong. But it's not an A and it's not an A+. Which for these types of movies, especially movies getting this kind of like critical reception from like the critics, to me, I was like, that's interesting. And even then... Oh, go on.
I was going to say, maybe this could be a part of our podcast. Once we switch to audio and visual, if and when that ever happens, I would love to put, every superhero movie since pick a fucking year, and just put them on a number line and make the objective ranking.
Yeah, we could do a tier list.
Yeah, I love tier lists.
Tier lists are great. Before we go on, have you heard one of the loudest controversies about this fucking movie?
No, do tell.
So I saw this on Twitter. It popped up on my Twitter feed. I think Philly D mentioned it in one of his videos a couple of weeks ago. So there's this reviewer. He's like a very conservative movie critic.
Oh boy!
So that already kind of tells you where this is going.
Yes, no, I did hear about this. He had a certain problem.
He had the takiest of takes.
Yeah, with melanin and not enough good white characters. Right, this guy. Yes, is that the one?
That is exactly the one.
Yeah.
Could you imagine walking into any movie and being like, man, all these black characters are too good. And all these white characters, not good enough. This is a problem. So
here's what I'll say, right? And this, oh boy, had we only started with this topic. So I've said I love the Dark Knight movies, right? There's enough literature that you can read online which suggests that, like, Christopher Nolan is on the more conservative end of the spectrum for Hollywood. Now, note that I said for Hollywood, right? I don't think he's rocking any red hats. But I do think that Batman as a brand attracts the disaffected white male more than any other major superhero.
Yes, I mean it's definitely the broodiness of it, right? Like,
yes, these are also the people who I think were hardest on Team Release the Snyder Cut.
Oh, absolutely.
And these are also the people who think, Disney is too woke.
The pussification of Disney, as they would call it.
Correct. So once I saw that guy, filming this in his car, which I, for one, am recording this on my queen-size bed with a Gengar blanket on a fucking Emma Stone poster above my head. So
you still have that?
Of course I do. So,
I am honored.
Yeah. Who wins the dignity battle? Me. but I will say, like, even if just one of those characters were black, I'm sure they would have thrown an equally big bitch fit. I'm
Oh,
surprised their bitch fit is not as big as it. I'm surprised their bitch fit is not as big as I thought it would be.
okay.
Right? Like, I thought these people would be loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a funny video.
It was such a take that I was just like, man, people really cannot just like appreciate a good thing. Like, this is why we can't have nice things, because everything in this movie, from the sound quality, from the cinematography, from the acting, every actor did a great job. And this is the thing that's like, nah, this is my hill to die on. It is for sure a choice to make.
Yes. And it is just more evidence that the far right in this country are really the biggest snowflakes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but like I said, had we only started with this topic, maybe it's better that we didn't.
Maybe it's better that we didn't. But
yeah.
So that said, I will only leave you with this. I still live in the headcanon that Batman does not know how to drive properly because he's a rich white boy, and he flooded his engine when he took off on the Batmobile. Yep, he stalled it. That's my headcanon.
Very good.
It is my favorite Batmobile.
I never thought I would hear you use the phrase headcanon. Yet here we are. Here we are today.
What's wrong with headcanon?
And I have. It's a Tumblr girl thing.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Here's where I'll be a Trumper. It's a Tumblr girl thing. But you know what? I have no response. I have no response to that other than huh. That is my response.
It's just, to me, it's funnier if that is my, like, the world that I live in. That he thought he was gonna be cool and intimidating, and he just punched it a little too soon.
Yeah,
but it was a legitimately really cool Batmobile. And
yes.
And that's the last thing that I have to say. Do you have anything else to add?
I have been seriously debating in my mind whether I prefer bum 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 or
no, for sure the bomb for sure, at least for me.
No, it's bum 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 bum. But great themes all around.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards this one.
Yeah,
it's slightly it's a little bit more pretentious in its simplicity, but I think it's less like frustrating in the long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets the job done.
All right. So, well, thank you all for listening and sticking with us through our ramblings and our tangents. If you like what you heard and you would like to hear more, please subscribe. We do have episodes coming out pretty frequently every 2 weeks, usually Friday or Saturday. Share the video, share the podcast with your friends. And next time, we will have our first double feature. I'm thinking
it was interesting.
It
was interesting. You have advertised this as a double feature, and therefore, out of dignity, I will not double back. But after I saw the movie last night, I said to myself, "Oh, I cannot, in good conscience, talk about this movie simultaneously." That's the other movie.
No, we don't actually have to do a double feature on that.
Yeah, but it's been put out there to the public.
Oh, no one cares. No one cares.
I have to give our millions of fans what they want.
Fine. We'll see.
Yes.
But we will be back in about 2 weeks. We are hoping to be able to see X, the new Ty West movie, the new A24 movie. Have you had anything spoiled for you on that movie?
No, I have not.
Good, keep it that way. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
We will have a blast, and if Thano chooses, we will.
Don't tell them yet. Don't tell them yet. Don't tell them yet.
Oh, okay.
Let it be a total surprise.
All right. It'll be a surprise.
Yes.
All right. Well, until next time.
Yeah. Until next time. This was our longest episode.
This is so far our longest episode, 1 hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you all. I am Javier.
I'm Thano.
And you can follow us at the Cinescoots podcast. And thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.